second James Bond thriller could be more exciting than the first.
So he's back. Another Bulgarian they use as a killer. Take a look. You should remember him. This man kills for pleasure.
James Bond, that notorious, amazing Dr. No secret agent, is back, and half the world is out to kill him. As he pits his murderous talents against the Iron Curtain and its velvet women.
Well, I'll tell you something, Kulturni. You're one of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen.
I think my mouth is too big.
No, it's the right size. For me, that is.
From Russia with love comes Tatiana, bait for the trap. From the four corners of the world come the men and women who play a deadly, dangerous game of espionage.
Do not be alarmed, my friend. We will make you as comfortable as possible.
Ali Kerim Bey, head of Station T, Turkey. Krasnogransky, codename Grant. Chief Executioner of Spectre.
My orders are to kill you and deliver the Lecter. How I do it's my business.
M of British Secret Service. The woman called Rosa Klebb, playing a double cross.
Klebb.
Romanova, the door. Romanova!
From Russia with love. They dance for him. They yearn for him. They die for him. From Zagreb to Sofia. From Venice to Istanbul. From Paris to London. Agent 007 cuts an inimitable path through the palaces and boudoirs of espionage.
James, you're hurting
I'll
me.
do worse than that if you don't tell me. I'm doing this under orders I know. And what are they?
Even if you kill me, I can say nothing.
This is M-Wire, Movie Week in Review. M-Wire is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up today to get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/geekcastradio. Start today with a free 30-day trial with over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Don't forget to follow Audible on Twitter at audible_com. And now the latest and greatest in movies with M-Wire.
Shaken, not stirred.
Hello and welcome to Shaken Not Stirred, M-Wire's Spotlight on the Bond films, which is brought to you by the Geekcast Radio Network and Audible.com. I am one of your hosts, TFG1Mike, and joining me is MovieRevolt Dan. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am Bondtastic.
Awesome. And today we're going to be talking about From Russia with Love. again, neither one of us were born in the 60s, so when was the first time you saw this one?
Wow, the first time I saw this one, like Dr. No, was probably on cable, not straight through. I think actually when I first sat down and watched it from beginning to end was a few years ago when it came out on DVD, kind of experiencing it that way. And then rewatching it again this year when it came on Blu-ray. But yeah, probably the first time was on cable back in the day.
Just like last week, a lot of the Connery films will be my first time ever seeing them. And the same case here with From Russia with Love. It was my first time seeing it, and as much as this film got critical praise, I'm not a fan. So before we really delve into it, let's head it over to JT from Saskatoon as he breaks down the plot for us and gives us just the facts on From Russia with Love.
After the events of the first film, the villainous Spectre organization plots its revenge on British secret agent James Bond for killing Dr. No. The plan, crafted by Spectre agent and chess grandmaster Kronstein, involves tricking 007 into stealing a Russian code-breaking device located in Istanbul, Turkey. Under orders from Spectre leader number 1, Kronstein is aided by KGB double agent Rosa Klebb, who plans to lure Bond into this trap with the help of Tatiana Romanov, a clerk at the Russian consulate in Istanbul, who doesn't know that Klebb has gone rogue. Tatiana contacts MI6 saying she wants to defect and offers the Lecter codebreaker, a prize both MI6 and the CIA have been after for years, as a means of securing the deal. 007 and MI6 head M both agree that this must be a trap, but decide to spring it anyway. Bond flies to Turkey and contacts local station chief Karim Bey, who in turn tells Bond that the Lecter is in the Russian consulate and it can be broken into despite its many defenses. Bond then goes to check into his hotel, where he discovers his room has been bugged, and not long after that, Bey is nearly killed by an assassin's bomb. After briefing 007, Bey shows Bond the flooded catacombs underneath his office, and the pair travel by rowboat to the Russian embassy. When using a hidden periscope to spy on the proceedings, Bey sees the assassin who planted the bomb and nearly gets the two captured before Bond calms him down. They later trail the assassin to his hideout and use the Turkish police to flush him out into the open, where Bey kills him dead with a sniper rifle. Bond later returns to his hotel, where he finds Tatiana waiting for him. They spend the night together, and Bond is unaware that their lovemaking is being filmed by Spectre agents through one-way glass. The next day, Bond obtains a map from Tatiana of the consulate and plans to set off a small bomb as a distraction so he can steal the Lecter device. The bomb not only covers his movements, but also destroys the communications room wall, which allows Bond to make a clean getaway with Bey and Tatiana. The trio then board the famous Orient Express and escape Turkey, headed for Venice, Italy. After dealing with some Spectre assassins, Bey is killed by Red Grant, another assassin who's been trailing Bond this whole time. After killing Bond's MI6 contact during a brief stop in Sarajevo and taking his identity, Grant introduces himself to Bond and eventually gets the upper hand, holding a gun on him. Grant then reveals that Rosa Klebb recorded Bond shagging Tatiana early in the film, and that Spectre plans to frame Bond for killing the young Russian and stealing the codebreaker. When Grant goes to get Bond a cigarette out of his briefcase, a booby trap goes off, blinding Grant and allowing 007 to choke the villain to death. Despite botching this attempt, Agent Klebb is given a second chance by number 1. After escaping several more assassins sent by Spectre, Bond and Tatiana finally arrive in Venice, and while checking into their hotel room, are held at gunpoint by a disguised Rosa Klebb. Klebb orders Tatiana out of the room, who finally figures out that Klebb has betrayed their country. She fights the turncoat agent, eventually getting a hold of her gun and shooting her dead. The film ends with Bond being cleared of any wrongdoing, the Lecter device returned to the Russian government, and Bond and Tatiana enjoying each other's company as they cruise down Venice's Grand Canal. From Russia with Love debuted in theaters on October 11, 1963, and went on to make almost $80 million during its theatrical run. Sean Connery returned to the role of 007 and led a cast which include Daniela Bianchi as Tatiana Romanov, Pedro Armendariz as Karim Bey, Valetic Shabal as Kronstein, and Lot Lenny as KGB turncoat Rosa Klebb. The film was directed by director Terrence Young, who had directed Dr. No and would later return in 1965 to direct Thunderball. The film itself was a hit with audiences, though it did generate some mixed reviews at the time. Richard Rout of UK newspaper The Guardian had a very backhanded opinion of the film, saying it was immoral in every way imaginable, but it was fun. Other critics, such as Penelope Gilliott of The Observer and Bosley Crowther of The New York Times, both loved the film. Gilliott liked the flamboyance of the production, while Crowther said he loved the improbable and illogical tongue-in-cheek style of the show. Many modern critics also love the film, saying it's a definitive example of a Bond film, and is refreshing that it lacks all the gimmickry that a lot of audiences would later come to associate with the series. From Russia with Love also holds a 96% fresh rating on RottenTomatoes.com, just behind Dr. No's 98%, and is considered by many fans as the best Bond film. Trivia you may not know about the film is that From Russia with Love was the first film in the series to have a title song. Entitled James Bond is Back from Russia with Love. The song was sung by Matt Monro, a popular singer on the international scene in the 1960s. The film is also the debut of both Major Boothroyd, aka Q, chief armorer of MI6, and the requisite gadgets. Such devices include the booby-trapped briefcase, spring-loaded knife shoes, and the garrote wire in an assassin's watch. And it should be especially noted that Sean Connery returned to the role of James Bond in 2005 after a 22-year absence to voice 007 in the video game adaptation of the film. From Russia with Love is the Bond film in my opinion. It has it all. The intrigue, the adventure, the suspense, the gadgets. Connery really stepped up his game in this one, refining the character of Bond even more and creating a definitive look and feel for the character in a lot of ways. It just doesn't get any better than this. This has been Just the Facts for From Russia with Love. I'm JT from Saskatoon. Now, back to M-Wire.
Thank you once again to JT from Saskatoon for providing us with the Just the Facts for From Russia with Love. Let's run down the cast really quick before we kind of get into our thoughts on it. You got, once again, Sean Connery as Bond James Bond. You've got Daniela Bianchi as Tatiana Romanova. Voiced by Barbara Jefford. What is the deal with these classic Bonds and they're acted by someone else but voiced by... I don't get it.
Usually it's probably because the person that they hired was hired more so for their looks than their acting ability. So when they kind of went back and watched the footage, they're like, well, we kind of have to fix this. Or it could be because their accent was too thick or something like that. But yeah, it was far more common back during this time than it is now.
Yeah. You got Pedro Armenarder, I can't even pronounce his last name, as Ali Kermbey, British intelligence station chief in Istanbul. You got Lottie Lena as Rosa Klebb, the main villain and ex-Smersh colonel, now chief operations officer for Spectre. Robert Shaw as Red Grant, cunning Spectre assassin and one of the principal Bond enemies. Bernard Lee again as M. Walter Gotell as Morzeny, Spectre thug who trains personnel on Spectre Island. Vladek Shebal as Kronster, the chess grandmaster and chief planning officer for Spectre. Anonymous credit for Anthony Dawson, body, and Eric Pinshaw, voice, as number 1. You have Mr. or I should say Sir, probably. I think he got knighted before he passed away. Sir Desmond Llewellyn as Major Boothroyd, head of Q Section, British Intelligence Gadgetry Department, and a bunch of other people. I did some math here, okay? I went on Wikipedia, and I looked up, because this film was out in '63, right? This was 1 year after Dr. No.
I believe so.
Yeah. I looked up Desmond Llewellyn's age, or his birthday. He was born in 1914, according to Wikipedia. And in 1963, he was 49 years old.
Wow.
I didn't expect him to be that old. He doesn't look. I mean, yes, he has gray hair, and all that stuff, but again, for me, my first experience with Q was Brosnan's films, and he looks really old in those, but I didn't expect him to be that old, because to me, he doesn't, in From Russia with Love, he doesn't look that old at all.
No, he definitely aged pretty well, considering in how long he was in the Bond franchise. He was 49 in From Russia with Love, and he went all the way up to, the Brosnan days. That's pretty impressive. He pretty much outlasted everyone.
Yep, pretty much. When I watch this, I will say later on when we get to the Craig era that they again set up sequels with 21 and 22, with Casino Royale and Quantum of Boredom. And yes, I will constantly call it Quantum of Boredom. Um, I did not realize that Doctor No and From Russia with Love were set up as, first film, sequel film.
No, I didn't realize either. I always assumed that the Bond films were kind of separate from one another, and that Casino Royale was kind of the first one that did it with Quantum of Solace. But this really ties into Doctor with No a lot. It's a direct result of Doctor No. I mean, you really can't go into this without seeing that movie. I mean, I guess you could, but I don't think you completely understand it, especially the beginning.
But my point of bringing this up is I don't mind that this is a revenge sequel on the part of the bad guys. Now, this is going to come back into play when we get down to the Craig era. I hate the fact that Quantum of Boredom is a revenge film on Bond's part. Yes, last week we spoke of how dark Bond can get and everything else, and that's all well and good. He is an assassin. He's a paid-for-hire assassin by the British Secret Service. I understand and get that, but there's a certain line that Bond has that it's a very thin line that I just don't think he should cross, and that's one of my major issues with Quantum of Boredom, and we'll get to that when we get to it, but I don't mind this, that it's essentially the bad guys attempting revenge on him for killing their agent, Dr. No.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And if you think Quantum of Solace is bad, wait till we get to License to Kill, because that's even more of a revenge film than that movie. But yeah, I like seeing how like the Bond, like what's strange about Bond, he's a secret agent that everybody knows in a way. But I was kind of glad this kind of gave us a reason why, because they knew what he did to Dr. No, and they wanted to get revenge for it. So I appreciated that. I liked seeing Blofeld for the first time. But yeah, I was not expecting, I anticipated this movie to be completely different than Dr. No. But
So what I find interesting about this is that, the whole revenge for hire plot and everything else, I find that interesting, but I found myself having to take breaks during this because it didn't, for me watching From Russia with Love, it didn't flow as well as I thought Dr. No flowed. There are a lot of scenes where it's just really slow and just, for me, dragged on.
I could understand that. I would say I personally love From Russia with Love, but it feels less like a Bond movie than Dr. No does. I think Dr. No is better representation of the Bond formula than From Russia with Love. When watching this movie, it feels more like Cold War thrillers of the time, or even Hitchcocking in a lot of ways, like Strangers from a Train or North by Northwest. Like it has a lot of use to those movies, more so than a lot of the Bond movies. It does feel completely different. It is slow. It's more of a slow burn than Dr. No. Things take a while to set up. It takes its time. It may take too much time, but yeah, I couldn't that if going into this and expecting a James Bond movie, you get something a little bit different.
Yeah. And like you said back in the GCR episode that we did covering the overall, one of your first experiences with Bond was video games. And my first experience with this movie was the video game of the same name. And I always got stuck on that stupid water level. When they're in the tunnel, when they're in the catacomb.
Yeah.
The boat. I always get stuck on that stupid scene because in the game it's like right at the very beginning of the game. I don't know. This movie didn't grab me like Dr. No did. This movie really has no mystery to it whatsoever.
No, really, you kind of know what's going on, and you're watching the Bond and MI6 kind of catch up with you. Like as Spectre is kind of unleashing their plot, you're you know what's going on, and you're just waiting for them to kind of figure it out. So you're right. There really isn't a mystery here for us as an audience.
Yeah, not at all. What do you think of the "From Russia with Love" theme at the end of the film being the first, I guess, official Bond theme?
Um, it was okay. Was not expecting it, to be honest with you. I'm used to hearing the Bond themes in the beginning, so
In the beginnings,
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I guess this doesn't have one either. But then it came on the end. It reminded me a lot of like Frank Sinatra in a way. It felt like a cheap Frank Sinatra, but I enjoyed it. I don't think it's one of the best. It's far from one of the worst, but it's a good place to start. But it's not one I would put in my iPod, basically.
Yeah, not at all. So getting into my highlights for this one, I love how in the scene when Bond is calling in to headquarters, and the chick is just constantly jumping all over him, and she actually grabs the phone out of his hand and says, "No, he won't be back." Essentially tells Moneypenny he won't be back, or whatever else. I like how he smacked her hand like a spoiled child. I thought that was great. um, and then the next scene I liked obviously was Q Branch and the introduction of Q as Desmond Llewellyn, and just the overall, even in this, just the way that Desmond played the role, just the way the character is, I just absolutely loved it. I loved how he described all the different gadgets in the briefcase. I just loved every minute of it. It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, he brings a lot of life to the movie, and like his scenes are often some of the best in the Bond films. And I love like his interplay with Bond. I think every Bond he kind of has a cool relationship with, and we kind of see that starting here with Sean Connery.
Yeah. I tell you, one moment that kind of shocked me was when uh, the assassination attempt with the explosion. I was like, "Well, I did not expect that." I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, that kind of came out of left field. It was really
Yeah, I was like, "Whoa!"
yeah, definitely.
Um, but no, I didn't expect that. I thought that was really interesting. And then we go to Gypsyville, and we have a '60s style WWE women's match. Nice.
Yeah, that was kind of odd in a way. Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously it was fun to watch, but you're kind of like, this really makes no sense in the plot of the movie. But I can see why they're doing it. Obviously, it's just yeah, let's have two women fight for no apparent reason. And
Yep.
but yeah, that was interesting for sure.
And then the end result is Bond gets to choose who won. And what I can only assume, and we haven't really brought this up, we didn't really bring it up in Doctor No, but what I got to bring it up here is, I can only assume that he decided essentially that it was a threesome, and all three of them had sex. Now, we mentioned in the GCR episode, go back and listen to that, about how Bond is a very sexual person. There is no such thing as safe sex here at all whatsoever. There's not. I don't think in any single one of the Bond films that a condom is ever mentioned or shown or anything, because that's just the way that the character is. Do you think that a threesome possibly happened?
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. I definitely think they're hinting at it. Maybe
Yeah.
people at the time didn't really grasp it. Maybe certain people did, but yeah, Bond. This is right during the sexual revolution, and that's when kind of things were becoming a little bit looser, they may say. And Bond even pushed it further, and definitely something like this, and having the first on-screen threesome, and also possibly the first on-screen celebrity sex tape, also within the same movie. Definitely kind of a little bit shocking for the time.
Yeah, yeah. What are your highlights for From Russia with Love? What do you like about the film?
I'll be honest, I have a lot of highlights, and I think they start. I mentioned with Doctor No, the first scene was great, and this is the first time we get the opening title or the pre-title sequence, and this one actually did surprise me. What I love about From Russia with Love, I love a lot of the characters. I think it has too many characters, but it also has some of the best James Bond characters, and one of my favorite villains is Red Grant, and we get to see him in the beginning kind of take down what we think is James Bond, but turns out not to be. And I love that moment. I love the Red Grant character. He's kind of a prototype that we see repeated throughout the Bond films. Kind of this muscular blonde guy, sometimes Russian, not always. what I liked about him, he's not just beat 'em up type of guy. He is a character that uses his mind. He tries to trick James Bond. He tries to be a spy just like James Bond. I appreciated that about the character. I love the scene with them on the Oriental Express at their dinner table when he's trying to trick James Bond that he's an MI6 agent. I like that because there was a lot of tension, and we didn't know what was going to happen. I appreciate little like moments like that.
Yeah.
Along with Red Grant, I think we have another great villain in Rosa Klebb, who scares the hell out of me. I'm not going to lie. She reminds me of that elementary school teacher that you would have that would scare the children, and she'd be the one that would walk into the cafeteria and everyone would go dead silent because they were just afraid of what she would do.
She's Miss Trunchbull from Matilda.
You know what? That's actually who I kind of that's exactly who I thought of. That's funny. I didn't want to bring that up. I'm like, I think people would make fun of me for that, but that's exactly who I thought of with Rosa Klebb. And it's hard not to think of Austin Powers as well because they parried her so perfectly in that movie. Though her weapon of choice is kind of odd. It seems kind of not the most practical having a knife in your boot, but it's James Bond. What are you gonna do?
I now know. The funniest thing is, a couple of weeks ago, before we started the Shaken Not Stirred series here on M-Wire, I don't know, it was late night, Saturday night, whatever else, I was flipping through the channels, and I flip over to TNT. Lo and behold, guess what's on? Wild Wild West. And I now know where the knife in the boot came from. Because, what's his name? Gordon. Artemis Gordon in that, played by Kevin Kline, puts a knife in Will Smith's, Jim West's boot. So...
Yeah.
I now know where that came from. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and they go back. I've watched Another Day, I think, before I saw this, and they kind of have a scene where they show the boot with the knife in it too. And at the time, I had no idea, but when I watched that movie again after seeing From Russia with Love, I'm like, oh, I enjoyed that moment a little bit more.
Yeah. Now this is also the film where you have the strange guy stroking the white cat.
Yes, Blofeld. And being a child of the 80s, I'm thinking they copied off Inspector Gadget. That's not cool. But obviously it was the other way around. But yeah, that's I love Blofeld. I love how they kind of built him up. We mentioned with Dr. No how it took a while before we saw Dr. No's face. It took a while before we saw James Bond's face, and it's going to take a while before we see Blofeld's face. It's going to take a few movies actually. But I love how they built up this character, gave him a lot of mystery, and I kind of enjoyed that. And what's more evil than having a white cat in your lap as you're slowly stroking it? It's a little bit freaky. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, at least the cat in From Russia with Love didn't end up hairless like in Austin Powers 2.
Very, very true. That would be even a little bit worse.
Yes.
What we talked about with the mystery, how there really isn't any in this, which is true. But what I also liked is how the job of Spectre, like we mentioned, it's trying to kind of make a bigger rivalry between Russia and the Allies, and how the MI6, when they hear about this plot, they hear about what's going on, they assume it's a trap, and like, oh, Russia's just trying to trap us, but let's take the risk anyways. But what they don't realize is that it's really a trap by Spectre. So I appreciated that, like, oh look, they know, like, oh, we know what's going on, but they really don't. I kind of liked how that was a little bit layered with the plot. Like with Jamaica, I enjoyed how Istanbul was used here. I don't think it was used as well as Jamaica was. We don't spend that much time in Istanbul as much as we did with Jamaica because all of Dr. No was in that one location.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the time we had there. I also liked Karen Bay, played by Pedro Armendez. I liked his character. James Bond always has that one guy, that one local that would help him out, and I loved him. I thought it was really fun. I thought he had a lot of personality. He was kind of like an older James Bond. He had all these sons, all these beautiful women around him. He was kind of like you could see why he kind of was very taken by James Bond, because he probably saw a lot of himself in Bond. And then I mentioned with Dr. No, there weren't many great action sequences that I really enjoyed. From Russia with Love had a lot of tense moments. There was a good fight between Red Grant and James Bond on the Oriental Express that I thought was fantastic, and I liked the final boat sequence. It was fun. It's still not there yet, but I liked how Bond kind of showed that he's a thinker as well, and how he took out all of these boats only using a flare gun. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah. Those are all my highlights.
Yeah. For me, boat sequences don't get, this is just my personal opinion here. For me, boat sequences in the Bond franchise don't get fairly decent until I think it's Man with the Golden Gun. I like the boat sequence in that. And then, of course, love the boat sequence in The World Is Not Enough. That was just simply awesome.
I think you might like. I'm sorry. I think you might like the one in Live and Let Die. I don't know if you've seen that.
Well, yeah, and again, one of the reasons, not only because we're celebrating 5 decades of Bond between November and December here on MWire and here at the Geekcast Radio Network, another reason is because we really do want to go back and watch as many of these films as we, 18 out of the 23. We want to go back and see them. I haven't seen Live and Let Die in ages.
Yeah, I think
so.
I'm kind of curious what you'll think of that, but yeah, like I can understand because going back and watching them, a lot of them do run together. There's so many of them; it's hard to kind of remember what happened in what movie.
Well, plus Roger Moore is the longest running Bond.
Very true. So
it's too much more. For me, the lowlights, I only wrote down 2 things. I kind of already mentioned this one, but it didn't. This one for me just didn't have the excitement and intrigue that Dr. No had. Plus, what's her name? Miss Romanova or whatever, Talia, Tito, whatever the hell her name is at the end. She kept moving her gun back and forth between Bond and the old lady, as if she was actually deciding which one to shoot. Seriously?
Yeah, that moment was kind of weightless. I didn't really like her character that much. I thought she seemed like she was integral to the plot, but they really didn't do much to expand upon her. They wanted that moment to mean something because she's trying to decide between her country and James Bond, but we have nothing to indicate that she would choose either way. And like you mentioned, there really wasn't anything there. That moment wasn't nearly as good as it could have been if they kind of did more to, make that character better, maybe blow it out a little bit more instead of it's just really thin.
And the way that she just the way the actress was doing the movements of back and forth, it was kind of like, this is gonna sound so bad, and British people, I'm sorry, it was kind of like the Queen or Princess Di or whoever, the royal wave of sticking your hand up and going from left to right. It wasn't like it, it just seemed like it was too fast. It wasn't like she was like slowly trying to decide between the two. She was just going back and forth. It's kind of like Brascal. Sorry, wrong thing. We are explicit here on MWire, ladies and gentlemen. Overall, From Russia with Love, it's not, for me personally, it's not the worst Bond film, but it's not one of my favorites. It isn't one that I will go back and watch probably ever again. I don't know. So let's take a quick break. Here's some commercials and other good stuff, and we'll come back with our final thoughts on From Russia with Love.
You can now hear the Geekcast Radio Network while on the go with Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher is a free-use and talk mobile app available for your smartphone. And when you download Stitcher to hear Geekcast Radio, you'll have a chance to win money. Downloading is quick and easy. Just find Stitcher in the App Store. During registration, hit the promo code box and enter Geekcast Radio, all one word, to get automatically entered to win $100. The latest episodes of the shows will be waiting for you in your favorites. You'll get access to lots of other amazing shows too. Always available to you on demand, no syncing. It's Stitcher Smart Radio. Don't forget to enter promo code Geekcast Radio when you register.
We are back, and I kind of pretty much already left my final thought, but I'll say it again. I just don't. This film was tough for me to watch. I don't know if it's the fact that it's just essentially boiled down. It is a revenge plot for the bad guys, or if it just like okay, I love Q's introduction. I will always love that. That's a great moment. That's a whole. That's what where we first saw Desmond Llewellyn as Q, and where we will we'll see him throughout the rest of the franchise. But other than that, the film as a whole, it just didn't grab me. I don't know. What about you?
I kind of came away with kind of the opposite from you with this. I think it movie does appeal a lot to my personal sensibilities as a moviegoer. I'm a fan of slow burn, so I kind of love the 60s style when it comes to movies like this. So I am a big fan of it. Like I mentioned, I don't think it feels a lot like a Bond movie. It feels completely different than Dr. No, and even different than GoldenEye and Live and Let or You Only Live Twice. It's kind of the oddball in Sean Connery's time as Bond. But personally, yeah. I love it. I love a lot of the characters. Like I mentioned, there are too many characters, but it also had a lot of great characters. I love how the plot is layered in the beginning, and the last bit of the plot is used for a lot of great tension and a lot of great moments. I love Connery again. I think Connery is even better in From Russia with Love than he was in Dr. No. I think he's more comfortable with the role. I think he even has a stronger presence. I do think it has issues, but personally, I just loved being in this world. I kind of loved how it tied in with Spectre and kind of getting to see Blofeld for the first time. I thought that was a lot of fun. But personally, I rank this near one of the better James Bond movies. But I could understand why you would maybe be indifferent towards it if it's not really in line with what you would be expecting.
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree with you. Connery is growing into the role. He's getting better as he goes along, and he was damn good in this as Bond. But as an overall Bond film, I think for me, From Russia with Love is essentially just a spy movie with Bond there. It's not. Yes, he owns the screen. Yes, he does he does an amazing job. But it's just like the plot revolves around him, and it doesn't really include him. I mean, okay, maybe that, I don't know. Maybe that sounds. I don't know. You get what I'm saying though, yeah. Where it's like all this stuff is happening around him and to other people around him, and
yeah, basically he's not propelling the plot forward.
Not at all.
The events of the movie are propelling the plot forward in a way.
Exactly.
Red Grant is more responsible for getting the movie started and kind of getting everything going more than Bond is for the majority of the film. And I do agree with that, but I guess that didn't really bother me. I just had a lot of fun. I liked seeing Q again. I forgot to mention, I did want to touch on this real quickly. I love the first Q gadget. I love the briefcase. Obviously it's not the most fantastic Bond. It's kind of more realistic, but I feel it fits in the movie really contextually really well, and it seems realistic. But I really love where it started and love where it's going to go even more. So.
Yeah, no, I love the briefcase. Yes, it's not practical, sitting in a gypsy camp, being a businessman suit and have a briefcase, but all the gadgets that are in it and everything it can do, I love that about it. What I didn't mention earlier, I thought I had written it down, but I didn't, was, as you said, essentially the, what's his name? Red
Grant.
Yeah, Red Grant. He essentially starts the film, and I honestly thought that until that reveal, I honestly thought that was Bond, and they had face mask technology back then. I mean, I thought that was brilliant how they did that. I thought that was great. But as an overall, the Bond formula, for me, this one just doesn't work. I don't know. Any other final thoughts?
No, I pretty much think we kind of summed it up pretty well.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us here on MWire Movie Week in Review. There are several ways to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show. Visit the website, geekcastradio.com. You can comment on each and every episode post. Again, like last week, I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to comment on this one too. Email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Leave the show's feedback in iTunes. Please do this. Follow us on Twitter. The show name there is GCRN MWire. Mine is TFG1Mike. What is your Twitter?
MovieRevolt.
You can also follow at Geekcast Radio for all the other network updates as well. Come find on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Geekcast Radio Network. Call the voicemail line. Tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name. 502-526-5821. We hope you enjoyed the Bond film review here in MWire's Shaken Not Stirred series and wish you'll join us next week when we'll be talking about Goldfinger. That was a horrible Shirley Bassey impression. Yes, I know. That's one thing that will never happen in these Shaken Not Stirred things is I will never sing, because I cannot sing to save my life. For now, I am TFG1Mike with
MovieRevolt Dan.
Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.